What's my motivation? I think it comes down to something really simple. Gratitude for all the people that contributed ideas, creative stuff to give us this world we have today.
Hey, it's Nick, and welcome to 1000 Rounds, the podcast where I explore the stories of solopreneurs who have made the bet on themselves to build a business that serves their life. Every episode, you'll hear all about the lessons they've learned and the uncommon routes they've taken to stand out in a world that is purposefully trying to commoditize them.
My name is Bobby Gillespie. I help brands design how they connect with humans. And that is basically a brand strategy and creative direction approach to thinking and then implementing the things that help you build relationships with who you're trying to build relationships with.
Are you still operating under Propr?
I am still operating under Propr. So I founded Propr for 9 years. I've started, built, and ran and operated a brand strategy and creative agency. And now I'm fully transitioning to being a solo.
I've been excited for this one because when we met, you were running a full-blown agency, right? Propr, been around 9 years, really like branding shop.
A branding shop that has very few peers in custom websites. A lot of branding shops, they'll do your website and they'll do it poorly. They have the technology and understanding to design and build a high-performing website, and they'll do your branding work because you asked them. We're really good at both.
It's been a long time. You've been running Propr for 9 years now, but you've since scaled down, which is what I find most interesting about what you're doing, is that a lot of people are like, they have ambitions of building a big agency and going from one person to a bunch of people. And you made the decision to go from an agency down to just you. Let's unpack that a bit, man. What was the turning point for you when you decided it's no longer the big agency life? It's time to do this thing solo.
I was the creative director of enterprise e-commerce and inbound HubSpot partner agency. I didn't share the same values and vision for the company as the owner did. They hired me. I was their first creative director. It was my first creative director role. And, I mostly focused on the e-commerce stuff. In time, after a few years, I was concerned about my reputation because we were falling short on our delivery of our promise to our clients. We would celebrate the sale and limp if we even got there on the delivery. And it frustrated me. I started to believe that my reputation was getting tarnished. So I had a conversation with them. And it was basically like, I need an equal voice as the business development folks because of those reasons. We agreed, and that was it. So it was fine how we separated. It was quiet and fine. And then I just kind of gave myself time and space to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was getting bombarded from every side. And other agencies were hiring me to rebrand them and do their website. And so I hit the ground running. But my vision was always the same. When you start a business, you have to give yourself grace. And I'm learning that again in this pivot because it's basically a new business, even though it's an evolution of what I've been doing. That's when the transition from being a solo to being an entrepreneur was going to happen. So I gave myself time, and eventually it took about a year, 15 months, I would say, until I no longer was letting myself being hired as an individual. But my goal was the same, right? I wanted to start a boutique agency with executive people that could provide better service than the traditional agency. I wanted a handful of people, 2 or 3 executive people, and then we would build bespoke teams with the best talent for that job, for that client, for their needs and goals with their budget in mind. So I went from 1 to 3. I hired 2 people at the same time. So I like to just kind of double down and test my mettle and make it really hard. And I started to see a different level of success. My hunch and approach works, right? You have really capable, experienced, talented people on a common mission, shared goal, know their roles and responsibilities. So we were taking on projects that other agencies would take on with a lot more people, a lot more overhead, a lot more bloat. And we would operate at double the profit margin that most agencies operate at. So most agencies are around 20, 25% profit. We're 40 to 50% steadily. So, we were doing good and the money was nice. I started to be like, okay, I kind of hit this goal. Now what? I didn't want to grow by adding services because I felt that there was already people that were really good and specialized with that, and we could bring them on as needed. So I didn't want to build out the service line expansion. I wanted to just focus on what we're really good at and focus on the clients that we really want to work with and providing sort of expertise in a lane and bring in the other pieces as needed. And we have video people and SEO and all that stuff that we need that, but I didn't want to bring that in-house to add unnecessary complexity to the equation. And I was stuck at this crossroads of do I continue focusing on the deliverables, the projects, the stuff, the creative handoff? I started working with these coaches who work with consultants, and I really kind of build out my personal prowess as a consultant. But by the end of that year, and I'm guessing on the years, I decided to not go all in and close the agency. COVID years were good, and then things kind of started to change. And it was what I was calling mass psychosis. Clients started asking for, for example, their name is confusing. They need a new name. They need a new brand. They need a brand strategy. They need a custom website. They need all the assets. You were thinking 12, 15 months of work, right? In a few years, clients were asking for the same thing, and they want it in 30 days. And they want it for $5,000. No, it was just that mass psychosis, which I can't understand why people want the results without the thinking, without the process. How else do you think you get the results? All these things that matter more than a successful business were overwhelmingly pushing me you need to make a change. I didn't know what that change was. So in a few months, I realized that you know what? I need to do what I do with my clients, with myself, and remember what life I want. Remember what is important to me. And I reflected on that. Our companies will take everything from us. It will take our lives from us. And that's what was happening with me. And I was like, I don't want that. I want to own my business. When the company was young, my wife was like, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to work these hours. You don't have to do that stuff. You don't have to say yes to that stuff. You can do whatever you want. Why did you start this? Have a goal, but do what you need to do to achieve that goal without hurting anybody, including yourself. I initially didn't imagine that I would shut down the agency. I tried to give it to my team, give it to them. And they showed no interest. So I said, I can't run two companies. Again, I'm burning myself out. I can't sell the agency creative work as well as the advisory strategic work at the same time. It just came down to a decision as to what's best for me and my life and my family, as to also what's feasible to run two companies at once, and just taking a small percentage of one, which requires an immense amount of commitment, or taking what the life I designed and then thinking about all my favorite work, all the most value I brought clients and to my favorite people to work with. And said oh, you know what? Projects aren't necessarily a part of that. It's me thinking with them, talking with them, recommending stuff, trying stuff together, right? So that's what I've designed my business to be now.
Man, I think it's noble to just call it like it is. You saw the ship was sinking. I've seen a lot of agency founders run it into the wall versus pull the parachute. I think it's hard after a decade of your life to look back and to formally shut it down. But it's not a failure by any means. If anything, I think it was a massive success. And really, it seems like you just read what was going on in the market well enough to know that it was time to shift. So my question for you is, making that decision clearly wasn't easy. And so I know there were things that you second guessed when you were doing it. What were some of those things you were questioning?
Part of it is emotional connection. It took me several months to really come to terms with not being associated with a creative deliverable. Like I've been designing brands and websites and all kinds of shit for essentially 25 years. That's what everybody knows me as. And to start something from nothing and build it to, a relative level of success, the success I wanted out of it. We could have gotten a little bit bigger, I think. It's okay to let go. That was also like a personal challenge. What I kept coming back to was that it's not a defining element of my life. Before I was, an art director and a creative director and an entrepreneur, I didn't feel that going from being a student to an employee or employee to a manager or a manager to a director, that I was giving up something. It was just a step in the journey. And when I thought about going from being an agency owner to a solo, it's just like when you get let go or a job or you separate from a job, it's like you still take all of your experiences and wisdom and knowledge and relationships with you. So it's not like I whitewashed it and now I'm a realtor or something. Like, but I tell you what, Nick, like when I was going through the trials and tribulations of the past 10 months, 12 months, I was like, do I need to get a job? Do I need to go be someone's employee? And I'm telling you, man, like none of that aligned with the life I want. So it was even more excruciating to entertain those ideas. And it would have been a nightmare because I would have been looking for the next opportunity to do my own thing again. Like I'm giving myself the space and grace to see where this goes. And like, yes, my reputation was tied to Propr as an agency, but that's okay to not be that agency owner anymore. I'm not that insecure that I need something else to define me. I'm just going to be me. And really, man,
Mm.
when I think about it, and I'm honest with myself, everybody that's hired Propr has hired me. It was a humble choice because I felt that, and I still believe that it's still true, that the company was more than me. Despite the fact that everybody who hired us hired me, they bought into me, right? And I resisted that till now that I'm back on my own. I know it, and I always knew it. But like with my people and even people who I still work with as contractors or collaborators and partners and whatnot, like my success is directly correlated with their performance. So like it's not me that we're successful, why we're successful. It's the people I surround myself with. All that wisdom and knowledge of how things operate and how I can bring the best value to my clients, none of that's gone. It's just facilitated in a different way. And I work with the owners of the company now because that's the person whose ear I need. And that's the person who needs to hear me.
So you went from doing the branding and web design execution work to the advisory and consulting work. I guess, why go into advising and consulting versus doing the execution work yourself and still scaling down the agency? Like why the shift into consulting?
So again, my wife in her wisdom said, why are you so adamant about not doing creative? Because I write very well. I design very well. So like I'm open to it. But the way I tried to position and structure Propr was like this. And there was a graphic floating around somewhere. It's like, think of like a mid-rise building. And each floor of that building can only get there through the elevator, right? Each floor of that building is a different service. The only way to access that was through the lobby. You got to go through the lobby. And the lobby is strategy, the thinking part. The thinking informs the doing. And that is what always made us different. I forced them to define why they needed it and what success looked like and how we could deliver that success and how we could use our specialized experience and thinking and knowledge to do the things to help them get the goals and objectives that they want. So, just spinning up a website for any business, like, sure, you can go get anyone to do that. Someone will be happy to sell you that. But if you want real results, so you had to go through that strategy part. And what became a challenge was less of the people hiring the agencies were interested in the thinking part. They just wanted the outcome. So that's why I think part of our struggle was we're a thinking agency. I'm going to ask you a million questions. And if you don't have the answers, we'll find the answers together. And then we'll be better off and we see clearly where we need to go. And then we go there.
But I think a lot of agencies will say that and they've been burned by it. And that's why they're turned off by it. Like, people will come in and they'll say, we want X, Y, or Z creative work done. And then the agency goes, great, well, we have to do all this strategy work in advance of that.
Yeah.
And you go through enough shitty agencies that do that. And then they go, I'm just going to find someone who's going to do the creative work because clearly this is always just a waste of time. It slows down the project, doesn't change much. It usually ends up being the same type of thing that I'm thinking of. So I think we've done this to ourselves, and strategy work has become commoditized in this idea of strategy by template. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, and you and I both know someone or most companies have been burned by an agency.
Even me. I mean, I'm not shy about it. I've been burned as recently as last year.
But this is the core of the issue, is that enough businesses are burned enough times, they stop valuing the work in the way that you and I value it or see it and the way that we want to sell it. And so I think this is a reflection of what you were experiencing when you were saying, I used to charge $100,000 and do it over 15 months, and people want to pay $5,000 and they want it done in 30 days. I think this is a reflection of the way that just creative work and agency work has, or what it's become.
Yeah.
When we first met, one of the first things you showed me was the book, Build Your Brand Like You Give a Shit. That's your book. I was hyped on it. You sent me a copy and we got into a conversation. I think this is kind of where an inflection point has hit for a lot of the market, is this tension between brand and category. And one of the things that I encouraged you to read when we first met was the 22 Laws of Category Design. And look, markets are going to evolve. It just is what it is. And the way that people perceive what they're buying or what they need and the problem that they have and how they choose to solve it is going to evolve over time. I mean, this is just the nature of all markets. This was an aha moment for you. And I'm curious to hear, talk me through just how you perceive and how you think about delivering strategy work to your clients through the lens of brand and category, and how you approach these types of problems for people. Because this is an interesting shift. And from someone who has done a lot of the creative work, has seen it become commoditized and seen how it has been devalued over time, and still see and know the value of the strategy first.
Something I say a lot is, what's the reputation you want? Because you're going to get the reputation you deserve. The marketing industry deserves the reputation it has because it's done everything in its power to earn it. It's like a casino. The agency is there to make money for themselves first. If you get results, sweet. But that's not what it's set to do. It's set to keep you as long as possible and charge you as much as possible. Outcomes be damned, right? And that's not black and white. But if you strip it all down, that's the bones. This is the question that everyone needs to ask. Is this what's best for the brand and our future customer? So to ask that question takes courage. To answer it takes clarity. And that's what I provide. I give them the guts to ask that question. but I get them to commit to the process to figure out how to answer that by instinct, by gut. So top down, bottom up, everybody's on the same page. Everybody's on the same team, working towards the same goal, but they know their roles and responsibilities are unique and they know how they contribute to the success of the company. Does that sound like brand strategy? No. But that is brand strategy. This is your brand. What is your reputation? What are you known for? What's your promise to your customers? Like that's more further down the line. So, in a strategic marketing standpoint, like that's where the category comes in. Like I feel like brand strategy is at the foundation of everything, and that's what I believed for a long time. But I feel like category might be a sliver below that. Not to get into the immense challenge to create a new category, but to just evaluate the category you're trying to operate in and to see like, hey, like how much of this pie can we get? What resources is it going to require to get there? And how do we define ourselves as just not another brand X?
I think the tension between category and brand has existed for a long time. Well, it's not even necessarily about creating a new category, right? It's like just category thinking.
Yeah.
Understanding that without the category, the brand is meaningless. Without running shoes, who gives a shit about Nike, right? Like this is just the general idea.
It's really helping them understand where they exist in the world and who their customers are. I'm working on my next book. It's called Market Like You Give a Shit. And it's more about, is it designing your brand to connect with humans, right? It's not about AI. It's not about tools and technology and gimmicks and the latest thing. No, it's humans are humans and we haven't changed ever. We've changed the world. We don't change. So like there's this Venn diagram, the Hurst Venn diagram, right? But it's pretty simple. What do you give a shit about? What do your customers give a shit about? That overlap is the promise, the opportunity. And you just have to understand what those things are. What's the most important stuff to you? And then people are like, oh, these buzzwords. It's like, no, like, what do you feel in your gut to where you would go outside and fight over, right? What's not negotiable? What's mandatory? And what's really important to your customer? You think about who you like, right? We like each other. We like other people. We like our families, most of the time. We like brands. There's something there that makes us appreciate one another. There's a trust based on a promise. And you don't have to articulate it when you're thinking about it in terms of interpersonal stuff. But when you're a business and you have a customer, and you're trying to build that relationship with your customer, because then you can say like, hey, you know what? Let's hire people that give a shit about the same stuff we give a shit about. It doesn't have to be their primary stuff, their core values or whatever, but it has to be shared principles. And that's how you're relatable. That's how you're likable. That's how you can have a conversation with somebody, right? I took this when I learned that, there's a million things that make you hate your job, and I've experienced them all. But it only takes a few things to make you love your job, make you like obsessed with your company, evangelizing, telling your friends to buy their stuff or their work there. The same thing goes with brands. There's only a few things it takes for us to really appreciate a brand. And that's the promise. So identifying what that promise is and then making all your decisions around that promise, what's best for the brand and our future customer is there. The answer becomes instinct. They're making decisions based on what they think is right. But if you have everybody on the same page, understanding what we're all about and what we give a damn about here, then they're making consistent decisions fast that support what's best for the brand and the future customer.
I think what you're describing is also just a lack of foundational strategy, like not brand, not category, not marketing, not sales, like just business strategy. Like if they don't know where decisions are going or where they're coming from or even how to make them, or that to me is that directional issue is a strategic one. Like strategic is direction. in its like rawest form.
It's choices. So like you're making choices about what's right and appropriate and preferred, right? But you gotta give people the benefit of the doubt though. Like those decisions, those opportunities to make choices are happening constantly within our companies, right? Big or small. And it's not a lack of strategy or direction or leadership per se. They need somebody, we all do, who's thinking big to come in and making sure that the big ideas are set and they're optimized every day by everybody else. And really that's what everybody's job is outside of like the people leading the company is optimizing day to day to earn the reputation we want. How can I facilitate extracting this information from my head and then make it actionable and tangible? It's like really freaking hard, but my brain doesn't stop trying. But doing it for others is just a joy because we always get there. And it does inform marketing. I mean, that just happens to be where my career took me into like the marketing and business dev and sales side of things, the revenue generation, the customer facing stuff, right? I love that space. And like it's where I've gotten all my experience and gotten good at. But these ideas, this thinking, it does impact the entire company. But like no one's looking for that. I can't sell that. No one's looking for someone to strategize and design my company. No, no one's looking for that. They're looking for things. And I get them in the door. And I realize the things you're looking for are so tied into everything that you're trying to accomplish and everybody you got trying to help you accomplish that. Like we're going to take a look at that and see where we need to fix things or evolve them or pivot them or sunset them, whatever, right? Coming back to that question, is this what's best for the brand and the future customer? There's a lot of companies I work for that would never, ever dare ask that question because they don't want to figure out what it is. They're happy selling people whatever it is they ask for. But I want to work with the companies who value time more than money and are trying to help, not hurt.
It just sounds exhausting. And it really is. And I think where you're at now is a really cool place that you've found a way to distill and package up the highest impact parts of this and offer it in a way that generates that outcome that you're looking to create. And it seems you can tell how meaningful it is to you. I'm curious, like what is your motivation?
What's my motivation? I think it comes down to something really simple. Gratitude for all the people that contributed ideas, creative stuff to give us this world we have today. People gave for that. I'm a Gen Xer. So I grew up and worked a lot of my career under boomers. And there's a tendency that my predecessors have to gatekeep things. And I want to give it away. I'm terrible at business. I'll just do this, right? I'll just give you this stuff. Because like that open source mindset is what got us here. What made me commit to writing the first book and the second, and why I write a lot and why I talk and create content and whatnot, is that it's our responsibility to do that. And if it can inspire or motivate or improve anybody, then like, damn right, then I'm contributing. Like I'm doing my part. One of the core values we have here, and I've always had this, is I want people to be better. Whether they met me, talked to me, read my book, read a post, listened to this, hired us, I want them to be better. Right? There's like a saying when you go hiking or camping, it's like, leave it better than you found it. It's like, I want people to be better, whether there's a transaction there involved or not. And I think that's it, man. It's like gratitude to those who gave before and a responsibility I feel to give to those coming up.
I like this idea that people gave, right? Like all of the work that people did was not for nothing.
Right.
Like it's been packaged up and synthesized, and it's continuing to create value for people. It's a noble cause. Like to not let that just like die, right? I guess is what I'm trying to get, is like to keep that alive and to continue to iterate on that and to grow it through the books and through the writing and all this stuff is cool. So looking back, is there anything you would have done different?
I don't necessarily have regrets because I see like everything as a learning experience, good or bad. As long as you come out of it and there's minimal damage and there's opportunity to improve. But if I think about my career, I would have gone and gotten therapy earlier in life. We all got baggage, right? We're all these creatures trying to do our thing. And I grew up in West Philly and it wasn't always sunny. I am not shy about seeking help, right? I look to those around me, whether I pay them or not. Like if I need help, I'm like looking for someone to help, right? I'm not like I'm going to bootstrap. I want to figure it out on my own. Like I feel like that's silly, but finding the right person to help you is harder than we want it to be. And realizing they're not the right person sometimes comes way too far down the line. But I think finding somebody to help with our mental health outside of business, outside of coaching and strategizing and consulting and doing, I think that is something that I probably should have done earlier. And it probably would have had a lot more positive impact long term than any other business decision I could make.
Yeah, not enough people bring it up, that's for sure, or encourage people to do it. So, all right, man. Well, let's end here, dude. Is what do you want to build that you haven't built yet?
I think I got a third book in me. Like the way we're doing the second book is definitely a continuation. So I want to do a series. And I think a series needs to be not even numbers. It needs to be odd, like 3 or 5 or 7. So we'll see where that goes. But I haven't finished 2 yet. So let's not get too far down the line. But I really want to give people permission to remember how to do things the right way. That I want it to be part of my legacy. That means like you care and you feel like you care, you're committed. So I want to build a movement around that where people are like, I'm not doing that. They're standing up for themselves or standing up for what they think is right. They're fighting for what they believe is right. And they're not like deluded or insane or weird. But I want to build a legacy around people standing up and fighting for what's right and the right way to do things. And like on my wall there's an old saw. That was my grandfather's. And people are like, why, the meetings, what's up with the saw? Like it was my grandfather's. It reminds me like we're blue collar family. Like we're working people. There was an honor and respect and an integrity around doing things the right way. And for some reason, we've allowed that to kind of become not the norm. So like, that's what I want. I want that to be my legacy. Like this dude gave a shit and he got a lot of other people to give a shit. So
thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for all of it, dude. And I know more people feel seen because of it. So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Hey, Nick again, and thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can sign up for the 1000 Routes newsletter, where I process the insights and stories you hear on this show into frameworks and lessons to help you build a new and different future for your own business. You can sign up at 1000routes.com or check the link in the show notes. This is the hardest hitting question you're going to get, so we just get it out of the way early. What would be your last meal on Earth?
I would cook pork and beans, and I would make grilled chicken on my Weber, and I would have brisket, like real Texas brisket. I would have the coleslaw we make, which is real chunky, and a lot of whiskey.
What's your go-to whiskey?
My standard is I drink rye, and my favorite cocktail is a Boulevardier, but I make it myself, so I go like triple whiskey. So Boulevardier is equal parts sweet vermouth, Campari, or like, a bitter type thing. The better those two ingredients, the better the drink's going to be. And then equal parts Campari, sweet vermouth, rye. I just go triple rye. I drink a lot of bourbon too. I like Irish whiskey and scotch. What I don't really drink is crappy whiskey.
I'm a bourbon guy myself. I'm very much into like Jefferson's right now. Jefferson's Ocean has been one of my favorites. A little Basil Hayden is a good one. You know your whiskey's good when it wears a belt.
Yeah, Basil Hayden's been around. I mean, it was in Deadwood. You could see them drinking Basil Hayden and Bullet. So I don't know if that they go back that far, but it could be just marketing.
I'll tell you this much. You're the only person to say they'd cook their last meal. Everyone else is going out buying meals.
You put me on the spot there, and I couldn't think of anything else that I would rather do than to hang out with my family and grill and eat and drink and chill if it was my last one.